So welcome everyone to this presentation hosted by the Canadian Theosophical Association. I'm your host, Mary Boudreau. The aim of these webinars is to provide information that encourages open-minded exploration and the opportunity to engage with presenters on the topics of theosophy, science, art, and the world religions. Most of all, we promote self-transformation and realizing the unity of life. If you are not currently a member of the CTA and would like more information about the organization, please visit atcta.org, and I'll put that link in the chat so you can have it. If this is is anyone here first timer on Zoom? Okay, then I'll skip the how-tos. And just a reminder, if you're not speaking, to please mute your microphone so we don't have any feedback. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Ed Moskowitz. Ed has a PhD in biophysics. He's been a member of the Theosophical Society of America since 2010 and has investigated non-duality for over 40 years. He hosts a weekly class on Sundays at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you'd like to attend, I'm sure he won't mind if I put his email address in the chat box. Is that okay with you, Ed?
Sure.
Okay. And today he's going to give us a presentation on a sense of non-duality. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ed.
Yeah, so I'd like this to be interactive, not just me speaking, but I'll be speaking quite a bit. How many people have, this is practice in raising your hand. How many people have been exposed to non-duality either through reading or YouTubes or any sort of interaction with non-duality? So just the three of you. Okay.
Oh, I think Maurice put her hand
Oh,
up too. Oh, and Valet. Yeah.
oh, okay. Good. Um, so this particular talk, let me, can I share?
Yes. Oh, hang on. Let me give you permission here. It's just, okay. You got to put the request in.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
So there are a lot of different ways to present non-duality, and so I've chosen this based on a book by Darrell Bailey, who's a Canadian non-dual teacher, lives in Winnipeg, and has written a number of books. And but before I get into that, let me show this common thing. Sure, I'm probably have seen this before. So what do people see when they look at this?
They see two things. A
Not
vase.
at once, you don't.
No, not at once. That's right. The brain flips. You either see the vase or you see the two profiles.
And so these are two different perspectives. Does everyone see that? That they either see a vase or they see two people looking, and you sort of switch back and forth. And so here's one presentation, and yet there are two perspectives. Well, there's actually a third perspective, which is just the whole picture. The black and white, which is identified with our perception as either this particular picture or that particular picture. So this is like a metaphor for reality. Reality presents this one thing, and then we select from this one thing some with pattern matching, some version, some perspective. But the perspective, sort of comes from us. So here's another example. What do people see there?
Yeah, well, you either see a young lady or an old lady.
Yeah, so yeah, there's the young one facing away, and then there's the old lady who's looking to her right or our left. So it's interesting that there's two perspectives, but what giving rise to those two perspectives is this one drawing, one presentation.
Yeah, Ed.
Yeah.
Even though I know that there are two there, I've seen this before. I know the old lady's there somewhere. I just can't find her today. So I know she's there.
So you look for the big nose.
Yeah, I remember she had a big nose, but I'm darned if I can find her today.
The chin of the younger one is the nose of the older
here's the
one.
big nose right there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, got her. Thank you.
So we're going to explore non-duality with 5 questions. But before we do, the way we're going to explore it is by observing our own experience in the present moment. Normally, we experience reality through a story, concepts, ideas, and those are overlaid over our primary experience of this present moment, this happening. Something's happening. You could have lots of questions about what it is or what it consists of. And you can come up with different stories about it. But before the stories come, we have this sense of presence, that something's happening. And so I'd like to explore that experience of something's happening. And usually we divide up this experience of something happening as something that's happening inside and something's happening outside. But in fact, we don't have to make that division. Both things are happening. And so there's a unity in the experience of the happening of the moment, which is prior to dividing inside and outside. So can you feel just this simple happening, the presence of something's happening? And then the first question is, okay, so what does that feel like? And the other thing is, does it feel like a past, a present, or a future? Your actual experience, what does this immediate feeling of existing feel like? And if you can notice it, it always it feels like it's present. It's the present. It doesn't feel like a past or a future. It feels like it's happening now. And so with feeling into this, not thinking about it, but feeling into it, feeling into the presence, can we experience the past? And you find that you don't experience a past. You could think about the past in the present. You could remember something which we call a past, but our actual experience is always of the present. And we don't experience a future. We can project a future, we could think about a future, but what we're experiencing just with the bare experience, what we know as the presence doesn't feel like a past or the future, and we can't really experience the past and the future like we experience the present. So this is a different perspective than the normal stories that we tell ourselves about what's happening. And so I'm going to continue with this perspective, but I just want to caution you is I'm not denying the normal perspective as a useful, valid perspective, but I'm emphasizing what the bare experience is and what perspective it can tell us. So now that we're in the present, is it possible to say what this immediate, vibrant happening actually is? Is it possible to know what any of this actually is? Now, this is pretty radical because in the actual experience, we can't really say what it is. And there's a number of reasons why we can't say what it is. One of the reasons is it's constantly changing. If you notice your present experience, your attention is always moving around and picking up a partial view of this whole experience. And while it seems like part of the experience can be held onto and grasped for a time, it's not. If you notice your actual experience, it's not for a very long time. Your attention moves to another aspect of your experience. We know just from our living that everything is changing, that everything, whatever form it has, is on the way to taking another form. The other thing we notice is just the experience of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and thinking is constantly presenting a huge amount of information. If you just look at the visual field, without anything that you're doing, it's presenting as much detail as you want to pay attention to. And so what we usually do is we don't pay attention to very much of it. Our minds limit what we pay attention to, and then we simplify it by just focusing on labels and forms that don't change too rapidly. But if you take in the whole happening, the whole vibrant happening, you can't really contain that in any way that we think of in terms of ideas or designation. Now we know, it's easy to fall into the way of viewing reality where we see a pattern and we're taught this part of your experience is a window. This part of your experience is a room. It seems to you have a partial experience and you learn to designate that partial experience with a name. And depending on what language you know, it may have a different name. It's an agreed upon name. You're taught as a child, you point to your nose and you say, this is a nose. You point to a chair and you say, this is a chair. But one of the things that you don't notice immediately is it doesn't really, the name and the changing form, but still recognizable, doesn't really tell you what it is. But we fall into the pattern thinking that we are actually saying what it is. It's sort of like a room number. You go in the door, it has room 2. And we think, okay, I know what it is. It's room 2. You open the door in the room, and there's a whole experience that if you pay attention is very surprising and was not expected by the term 2. The term 2 didn't tell you anything about the room. And that's true about all the labels that we've learned to think. They don't really tell us what things are. And yet they pretend to tell us what things are. And we think we know what things are if we are able to label it. So this is all getting to the point where we divide up the reality that we experience in parts and pieces, which we label with names that we think tell us what they are, but they don't really tell us what they are. And in focusing on the stories we tell ourselves about the things we've labeled, we overlook our primary experience of this immediate happening. And it turned, and in overlooking that, we have a false impression of what's really happening. Let's go to the next question. So we've learned that with labels and put on patterns or forms, we have a distorted view of what's happening. We think we know what's happening when we don't. We make up stories about the interaction of these forms with names when we don't know what they are. We have the impression that the forms we name are static, unchanging forms when they're constantly changing in our experience. So we overlook the constant change of our experience. And all these have implications in the way we view the world and cause us to overlook this bigger picture. So what is there when there isn't any distorted interpretation? And the distorted interpretation is tied to thinking, this process of labeling and comparing forms that are constantly changing, but overlooking that changing form and believing that the names tell us what they are. So what is there when there is no thinking? So just a little experiment. Ask the question, what is there when there is no thinking? And then pause. Stop thinking. Notice what happens right after the question is asked. So maybe one of the things you might notice is immediately thinking starts up again. I mean, unless you're very practiced, you can't stop thinking for very long before you start thinking again. But the moment right before the thinking, you might get this, the sense of this moment, which you can't really say very much about. It's and yet when you do it, you might get some insight, and you might notice some of the properties that you can't really put into words, but that exist as your experience. So what this is pointing to, an experience of what is prior to thinking. And you may not see very much initially or right now, but if you do this on a regular basis, slowly but surely, what is reveals itself. You could say tells you what it is. So in this immediate happening, the next question is, am I making anything happen? In this immediate happening right now, am I making any of this happen? So does anyone want to answer that?
I'm not making anything happen. I might think I am.
So yes, we definitely have a story about making things happen. But if
So
you,
Ed,
yeah,
is this something like the Buddhist notion of conditioning, like everything dependent on everything else?
I think you could draw that conclusion, or in the experience of the moment, and explaining how everything happens. But this is sort of prior to explaining how everything happens.
Because I
It's
come
just
in here and I put the lights on, right? But I wouldn't be able to put the lights on if someone hadn't done this and that and so on and so
right. So this is more basic than that. And again, this is the perspective, not in trying to figure out how things happen, but in the moment, are you the one that's making things happen? Can
Yeah,
you
so
find yourself making this this happening that you're experiencing? Are you is it given to you, or are you making it?
certainly happening through my filters.
So yeah, we think it's again, we want to jump to explanations right away and not stay with the basic fact of this happening is presenting, and I'm not doing anything for that presentation that I could experience. You know, the other thing you may notice is there is just this presentation. There isn't you and the presentation. There's just the happening. The happening can include a sense of self. It includes everything, but it's one happening. And so in focusing on the happening of the moment, you start getting this, what is called this non-dual sensibility, this non-dual, that there isn't you and the happening, there's just the happening. Now, as soon as, the mind wants to come in, how can that be? I mean, it's happening to me. Uh, I have to be experiencing it. It wants to explain things with these labels and forms and things like that. And this is an invitation to stay with the bare perspective, um, and feel the happening, um, and you could notice, as part of the happening, the mind going on and struggling to explain it, or remembering stuff and things like that. That's part of the happening too. but what's being presented is this all-inclusive, not particularly rational or logical happening that's always happening as one reality. And again, the mind comes in and say, well, I'm limited, I'm only seeing part of it. I'm here and that's over there. And it's going to jump right in with the other perspective. And to begin with, it's challenging to stay with this perspective. And start feeling into this perspective and how the implications of this perspective are so very, very different than our normal perspective. And again, the mind wants to say, well, which one's right? Which one's the right perspective? Which is the truth? And reality, you can begin to notice, supports both perspectives. They don't really contradict each other. It's more paradoxical. They both can live within your reality. They both already do live within your reality. So this is what non-duality is pointing to, that there's a perspective into your actual experience that implies a very different sort of reality than the normal perspective. Let's see, and the final question. Now, if I'm not making any of this happen, how is it happening? And in being with it, you just say, well, it's happening on its own. I'm not doing it. It must be doing it. And we have a view of nature which squirrels act like squirrels just because they're squirrels, and plants and trees grow because they're trees. Nature seems to be doing all that. But we have a very different view about humans. Somehow or another, humans are outside of nature. Nature's not doing humans. Humans are doing humans. And not only are humans doing humans, they're also making changes to nature and the universe. And that perspective has, again, some support in the way we label things and fix things and seemingly manipulate things. So we have lots of arguments in favor of we're doing things that affect nature. But in order to have that perspective, you have to jump out of nature. You have to be separate from nature to do that. And non-duality in this perspective says that's impossible. You can't jump out of reality and affect reality. You're part of this reality. And to start feeling that, to start experiencing being a part and more than a part, as reality, reality being expressed through you and as you, is the purpose of non-duality, to have that visceral experience that, no, I am not separate from reality, manipulating reality. I am included in reality. I am not separate from reality. And that has a very different implication on how you live your life, how you view your life, how you go about day-to-day activities. It's more, you notice that nature has this natural flow of one thing leading to the next thing, leading to the next thing. And being a part of reality, you notice that you're flowing as well. And so this view of what you are is, you're not an object separate from other objects with labels. You're part of the flow. You are the flow of reality. So that's where the sense of non-duality, not the philosophy of non-duality, starts making an impact on how you navigate life. You're no longer navigating it. You are life expression. So those are the 5 questions to investigate this non-dual experience. So, what are people's burning questions?
Ed, this is DC. When you say the flow of non-duality, that you're part of it, that I felt myself, things became not easy, but there was an ease about it. It was kind of like no pressure. But anyway, I want to go back to, I have a question about when you said when we were experiencing the present. Well, very quickly, and we couldn't experience the past and the future, but very quickly, if I'm in the present moment and everything is changing, it's becoming the past. Can you expound on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, for example, the present second has now become the past second. In what way can you experience the past second? It's gone. In fact, yeah, time is a very slippery thing, in that the present moment, you can't really find even the present moment, and it appears and disappears at the same time. So it's completely irrational from a thinking point of view. But that's everybody's experience, that it's here and gone immediately. And yet there seems to be something persisting. There's not the feeling of, oh, I had it and lost it. No, you keep having it and keep losing it, but you don't lose it, but you don't have it. It's completely mind blowing. So and yet it's perfectly, this is what we're experiencing all the time. It's perfectly natural. And out of this, appearing, disappearing act, there's the appearance, the appearance is actual. I mean, you're seeing stuff. You're actually and you're participating in this actuality. It's completely mysterious.
Right. It is. Thank you.
It's a magic act.
There you go. I like it.
Mary here. When you were talking about labels, I remember mentioning this in one of your classes that when I was a kid, it came to me, I was looking at this creek across the road from the farm I grew up on, and it's a branch of the Humber River. And I thought, does the river know its name? I have a name. I've been taught this name, but it doesn't say, like you say, it doesn't explain anything about the river. It doesn't say whether it's got a stony bottom or a silt bottom, or if it carved a canyon, or, is it a meandering river? That name says nothing. It's only, it's like I say, it's purely a label. And then when you were talking about, oh, an extension of that idea is, okay, I go in a lamp store by myself and I select a lamp and I'm going to buy it. So I pay for it, but it's not packaged up yet. It's still on the display, and there's hundreds of lamps in this store. And this is going to explain the futility of labels. Then I say to my girlfriend, could you go pick up the lamp I bought? And I tell her nothing, no description, no nothing. She wouldn't be able to find it unless she handled every lamp in the shop. So, yeah, that came to me while you were giving this talk. So I just thought I'd share that as examples.
Yeah, and where this perspective comes into use is when we obsess with these stories. I often obsess about the political situation, and so I think I know what's going on. I have names for everything. I know how all the names interact with each other, and I don't like it, or I do like it, and but then you remember, wait a minute, I'm just playing with these objects that are changing in real time with names that don't really tell you what they are, but pretend to tell you what they are. And it just puts it in perspective, saying, do I really know what I'm talking about? I mean, am I really on top of what's actually happening? And so, again, you take a step back. It's doing something. It's saying something. For example, it helps you fix a light bulb and things like that. But it never gets down. If you drill down in any of these things that you absolutely know, you find that there's always more, and there's always other than what you've seemed to encompass in what you know. And so there's this feeling, this open-ended exploration, which um, again is another perspective that allows you to hold your ideas more lightly and not have them not only have them drive your emotions and your actions. It allows, when you actually see this mechanism of the mind, how it pretends to know things, and it pretends to tell you how important what you know is. When you see that mechanism and you take a step back, that allows what we call the higher self to put its 2 cents in, allows it to inform what you're thinking, how you're feeling. Yes, Janice.
I was going to say something else, but just on what you just said there. Yeah, there's so little time, isn't there, these days, to pause and reflect like that. I mean, answers are expected so quickly, and we're just not thinking. I know Eckhart Tolle often complains about this, that we put a label on things, and then it saves us ever having to think about them ever again. So, you tell this kid, your kids, that's a robin and that's a swan. And it's like, yeah, I know what that is. That's a robin and that's a swan. And that's it. That's as far as it goes. We don't have to think about it anymore. And we think we know. And it allows us for a certain amount of smugness. And I get kind of annoyed with the educational establishment about that. I must admit, but that's just another facet of the same problem. Then I want to just comment on your first issue about what is there before. Right at the beginning, you were talking about before qualities.
The story.
Right. I used to get these awful migraines that affected my speech centers. And it was almost like having a stroke. And I started to have them when I was 12. And what would happen would be I wouldn't be able to speak, or I wouldn't be able to find my words. And I found it, after the migraine had gone, really interesting how I would struggle to find a word, and it would be qualities of whatever it was that would come. So, for example, I wanted to say something about a butterfly, and only the word flower or petal would come. It was something to do with the quality of, the tenderness of a butterfly's wings and petals and things like that. The kind of words that would come up were more qualitative observations. I couldn't find the exact words.
Yeah.
It's still thinking mind, isn't it? But
It's sort of, you sort of took a step back on how you identify the object before you put a label on it.
Yeah, when my labels blew up on me, I was just a few qualitative things remained. That's just an observation from before, but thank you.
Yeah.
The last comment that you made, I think, is getting closer to the point. In going through your 5 questions, it seems to me it's like the dog chasing its tail. And it's really bewildering the lower mind to the point where it wants to get out. And I think that's the whole purpose of the exercise, is for us to get out of our lower mind and allow something to come in which is beyond.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned the higher self, that is where the identification will come from.
Yeah.
And I agree that things don't label themselves. Things are neutral, and we label what we bring to that form or that object. It's we ourselves, what we bring to it, that produces the label, not the thing itself.
Good observation. Yeah. The Course in Miracles says we give the meaning to all that we see.
Yeah.
And yeah, it doesn't, the chair doesn't say I'm a chair.
Yeah.
We call it a chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, the idea, while going through the questions, the idea is to stay with the actual experience, and that undermines the mind also, the lower mind. Because the mind, again, wants to jump into and explain the experience or give an opinion or judge the experience. And this sort of gives a practice in this witnessing of what's happening before. And this witnessing property is one of the aspects of the higher mind. It is the awareness, the observer, and in not coming up with explanations, because the explanations in the lower mind divide up reality, parse it out, while the higher mind sees the whole picture.
Yeah.
It sees the wholeness of the experience. And it also sees the infinity of the experience. It sees how vibrant and uncontained what the experience is, and what you ultimately are also.
Back to labels, and the limitations of our language. And when we look at, theosophy and so many Sanskrit words that have words that describe things that we need many words to describe instead of one. There's also in indigenous language, and an example came. I love flowers and stuff, and I have a book, and it had the Ojibwe name for a pond lily. I can't recall how to say it at the moment, but the English translation was star having fallen from the sky.
Hmm.
And I thought that just, that's not what happened, but it's such a beautiful way to see that flower. And that I think a lot of that is missing in English language. Um, but anyways, just rounding out the labels. And the other thing, can you explain how theosophy and non-duality relate to each other?
So, in the Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky starts with the first fundamental proposition, and that's the non-duality part of theosophy. And she even says, all this story and explanation that the Secret Doctrine gives is useless, or not understandable without understanding the first fundamental proposition, which explains basically the one thing, the absolute, the inconceivable, conscious, non-conscious, um, basically illogical one thing that underlies everything. And she says this is so important that you have to keep this in mind, this perspective in mind, even though I'm giving you all sorts of parts and pieces and explanations and stories and things like that. All that doesn't make any sense unless you have the basic knowing that this is just one reality expressing itself, appearing to be all these different parts, and never deviating from itself, never actually changing itself while expressing all this manifestation. And so she just states that, and that's pretty much all Theosophy emphasizes about non-duality. Though again, it pops up. Other authors describe it a little bit more, but so that's the way I see it. It's sort of the foundational understanding that, and then of course in the voice of the silence, she gives you various things to do to get in touch with that ultimate reality. So it's, you know, it's woven in and often well disguised, but foundational. The same thing with Buddhism. Buddhism is primarily non-duality, but again, it's kind of buried in a bunch of other information that if you're not aware that that's what it's trying to point to, it's easy to overlook. It's not explicit, and it's true with the mystical traditions of all the different religions. Underlying all the different religions is basically the founder's experience of this non-dual sensibility. And from this experience of non-duality, everything else springs. But again, you know, if you know where to look, it's all there. But if you're not looking for it, it can be well disguised in the details of all the different expressions.
Yeah, because
Is
aren't the other names for it Vedanta or Advaita?
Again, Vedanta has Advaita means non-dual. That's what the word means. Dvaita is two. Advaita is not two. And it's a branch of Vedanta. There's also other branches of Vedanta that has duality as the basis. So, so again, Hinduism has non-duality as a basis, but it has a lot of other stuff that it could, you know, worshiping gods, and the Bhagavad Gita, you know, points to various non-dual sentences among lots of other sentences. It's just not emphasized to the extent that I'm interested in. Somehow I've just drawn to this particular expression. That's the other thing. We're all unique individuals, and we're all unique in the way we need to see reality. And this is just one perspective. This isn't the one true perspective. If you're attracted to this and you're interested in it, good. If you're not, good. You're still, you know, you're still an embodiment of life with your own particular unique path and and participation.
Thanks for that. Is this called or referred to as the top down versus the bottom up?
Yeah, the idea is to get very familiar with Atma, you could say, or Brahman, the one reality, and from that derive manifestation, duality, actions, ethics, philosophy. Start at the top and get very familiar with that. And fortunately, you know, the one thing, the one reality is always present. So it can be investigated, even though it's well hidden in its appearance. But even being hidden in the appearance, it's there, and it's what you're made out of. And so that the fact that you're made out of the same reality you're investigating gives you the ability to investigate it. If you're drawn to it. And the other, from this perspective, there is no you separate from reality. It's always reality investigating itself, you could say, or hiding itself. It does whatever it wants. It's not limited to any one way of acting. It supports all ways of acting. It supports being a tree. It supports being a human. It supports being a rock. It supports things we don't have names for. It's completely free to appear as anything and everything. And to the extent that you're in touch with it, it gives you that same freedom.
Thank you. Can you recommend a book or two?
So the way I discovered it was a book by Nisargadatta Maharaj. I Am That. He it was edited and translated by a Polish engineer who spoke the Indian language and was able to translate the concepts in a manner that Western people can think of it. So that was my first introduction. I Am That. And then there's books by Ramana Maharshi, dialogues with him. Again, in terms that Westerners can understand it. And then from those two were derived lots of different teachers. And so, if you're interested, I would look up non-duality on YouTube and listen to all the modern teachers. They each have a slightly different way of approaching it, and they're all talking about the same thing, but they emphasize different things.
Great, thank you.
And Ed, this is DC again. It's obvious that non-duality is your thing because of your understanding and your willingness and ability to communicate, about which probably on the surface at least can be a more difficult subject to understand. So I think you do a great job.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, why this attracted me and why I was interested, I don't know. It just happened.
And one more thing, this is DC again. For those of you on this call who don't know, that is in Ed's background is the Theosophical Library in Wheaton, Illinois.
Oh yeah.
So lucky to have access to that.
Yes, I'm often found sitting there. I live about 5 miles away from it.
Mm.
From the very beginning, from your very first question, I was trying to place myself outside of this, what we call reality. And I was trying to imagine myself as part of this non-dual, all-encompassing, the real reality, if I can say that. And what I ended up feeling and where I ended up being was a molecule as part of a river. And the river is this Manvantara. And I'm just part of the river. I think I'm a single little unit in that river, but I'm not in control. The river takes me wherever the river is going, and the river is ultimately going to the ocean. And I look around me as I flow down this river, and all the scenery all along the way, although it is somewhat similar, there's trees and there's houses and there's towns and there's all kinds of things. It's constantly changing, constantly, nonstop changing. And so I am part of this greater thing. And as I was going on with this metaphor, I was thinking that the river basically is spirit and the banks are matter. And the two go together. The river needs the matter to have a bed to flow in, going to the ocean. And I was just, if I am part of this river, I'm an insignificant part of the river. I am the river. And that's the thoughts that were going in my head for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. So, reality has this weird property that it has no parts, actually. And so if you're a slice of pizza, you're the whole pizza. Or the way to think of it is, you try to touch the atmosphere. So I'm touching the atmosphere. I'm touching the whole atmosphere. You could touch anywhere and you're touching the atmosphere. And that's the reality. No matter how small anything is, it's the whole thing because there is no separation. There is no boundaries with reality, though the boundaries appear. The mind puts the boundaries in. It draws the line between the shore and the ocean. But that's just an arbitrary thing.
Reality is holographic, right?
It's another metaphor that's useful. How a hologram, you cut a piece of the hologram, and it still has the whole picture in that piece. So that's another metaphor that's useful. You know, someone said it's easy to see how the drop is in the ocean. It's harder to see that the ocean is in the drop.
Mm-hmm. But it is.
It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because the drop carries the memory of the ocean.
Yeah.
Then we have the practical problem of understanding that we are all one, right? And I can do the theory beautifully until I see what, say, ice is doing, and I just feel so not the same. And of course, that's so problematic, isn't it? I mean, to really feel that we flow, we are the same organism. But I mean, organisms have different parts, I guess. And then I guess we need to stop thinking like a part and flow more.
Yeah.
But it becomes very difficult when we're dealing with people, because people are notoriously difficult. And as Eckhart Tolle would say, not me, and not you, but other people, notoriously difficult. And that oneness, that real heartfelt oneness, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And what I'm struggling towards. That's what really matters to me. I want to really feel that, so I can feel utter compassion or something with everybody, and with no matter who they are, how different we seem. And that's a struggle.
So one of the things that helps me is, again, starting from this sense of separation and identifying how I'm just the flow of reality. If I could feel how I'm the flow of reality, how I'm flowing, how I'm not even doing me, much less doing anything else. I'm the flow. And then I can translate that, well, you're just the flow of reality.
Yeah, so you're not doing you either.
You're not doing you either. And we're both, and our interaction is the flow of reality. And so again, it's more of a feeling than an idea.
Yes, absolutely. That's
And
what I'm saying.
so it just try to notice how that's true in as many different circumstances as you can, and how that feels.
Yeah.
Get it through the feeling. Another metaphor is using is how the heart sees things as opposed to how the mind sees things.
Very different. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, we're all in that same journey, Janice.
Can you touch on that difference between, the thought concept versus senses? I mean, that always comes up in your classes where it's more about sensing than the thoughts.
Yeah, because again, the thought is based on the sensing. So going back to where the source of thought gets you closer to the reality from which thought springs. And so the idea is thought is just doing its job in dividing up and simplifying things. And it's useful, but it never tells you the truth of things. It tells you a relative conditional useful thing, but not the whole picture. And so through the senses, it seems that we more sense the wholeness. It doesn't seem to divide things up as much as thought does. And it also doesn't claim to be the truth or whatever. And so it's a step in stepping away from that separative, purposeful, goal-oriented, judgmental mind in this more observing, accepting, inclusive niche. And then there's a step beyond that. It's just the means. It's a doorway into this mystery.
Well, that sounds like a good place to wind up. So I'd like to thank everyone who came today and gave Ed some things to talk about and answer. And thank you, Ed, for putting on this presentation and expanding our minds and our awareness and no doubt our lives. So
You, Ed. Thank you.
on behalf of the CTA, thank you, everyone.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. It was great. It was great. Thank you.